He was run over and reincarnated in a dating game, but a stumble ruins his plan to choose the ideal alpha. Now trapped in a forced relationship with an arrogant alpha who despises him, he must use his wits to survive complete missions, and maybe even turn that contempt into love. The main character of this tale is an ordinary office worker, someone average who finds an escape from his daily routine in video simulations and anime. Despite not having a partner, he understands what love is and dreams of experiencing it. One day, while crossing a pedestrian path, he was so absorbed in gazing at his phone that he didn't observe the infamous isekai truck coming straight for him. By pure instinct and perhaps with a pinch of spider luck, he succeeded to dodge it at the last moment. Nevertheless, the truck wasn't alone. His partner appeared out of nowhere, determined to finish what the first one hadn't. The main character determined not to give up so easily. Once again, dodged death. But the chase proceeded. Until exhausted, he ultimately gave up and accepted his fate. When he came to, he found himself surrounded by status windows, similar to those in video simulations. It was afterwards that he understood he had been reincarnated in an isekai world. But his initial joy turned to confusion when he understood he had been reborn in a dating game. And not just any game, but a BL-themed one. Even though he initially pondered why the universe had sent him there, he soon stopped resisting and thanked the stars for such a gift. The simulation in question was precisely the one he had recently started playing. One developed by Thais and whose system he had studied by reading the manual. It was an Omegaverse title called My Boss Is Not in a Good Mood. However, male characters, especially Omegas, could become pregnant. In this story, the main character was reborn as the playable character, the youngest son of a family of entrepreneurs involved in the real estate sector. His father and his two older twin brothers were high-ranking alphas, with genes that represented the top of the hierarchy. On the other hand, he was a recessive omega occupying the lowest position in that hierarchy. Nevertheless, he didn't let that affect him. His life was comfortable, and even though he ranked below even other omegas, his good looks gave him confidence. The main plot of the simulation revolved around an ultimatum his father gave him. He must marry an alpha, and since he was a college student with no accomplishments of his own, he didn't have the means to support himself. To buy time, the main character proposed meeting an alpha in person before deciding. The resulting date was with a man who seemed to have no filters. From the instant she witnessed him, the alpha gazed him up and down as if sizing him up. He even had the nerve to mention that he had seen him at a party and that, ever since then, he was convinced they would end up married. This comment made the main character uncomfortable, especially since he observed the alpha paying particular attention to his hands. The alpha proceeded, clarifying that if they got married, there would be certain habits he wouldn't change, and that he would have to accept them. For the main character, the man seemed to be living in a fantasy world as he would never marry him. The situation reached an awkward point when the alpha tried to hold his hand. It was afterwards that the main character resolved. He no longer desired to proceed the date, but the man insisted on stopping him, causing the simulation system to activate a new mission. The screen that appeared inquired him to choose who to ask for assist to get out of the situation. In the game, players could choose between two male main characters, each with entirely different personalities. The first was Jin Chirakorn, a kind, attractive and always helpful alpha. With his light hair and charming smile, Jin was the kind of character who melted hearts. On the other hand, there was Pakfan Dekanan, but we'll call him Pak or whatever the main character calls him. This was a cold, arrogant and sharp-tongued alpha, a prominent leader in the entertainment world and owner of an establishment under the prestigious Ekalo group. Even though his modern style and rugged appearance made him popular, his attitude made him intimidating. The main character clearly preferred gentlemen, so he opted for Jean. He stood up from the table with determination, ready to find him and ask for help, claiming he was being bullied. Nevertheless, as he tried to escape, he tripped over his own feet and fell in the opposite direction. When he opened his eyes, he understood he had fallen into someone's lap. That someone turned out to be Park, who gazed at him with a cold and analytical expression. The main character slowly raised his head, experiencing his heart pounding as he reflected. This will be my main character. The system congratulated him on selecting his partner in the story, But the main character couldn't be more furious. The character's in-cut simulation icon was far more attractive and charismatic than the real thing. He cursed the system for deceiving him and reflected it was all a cruel joke from fate. Park stares at him and inquires what he just said. Did you mention you were being bullied? Before he can proceed, the scent of the Cher's pheromones fills the room. Park can't assist but think that, with those pheromones, any other omega would seem insignificant. The pheromones that hallmark that serves both to attract and express identity impact him in an unexpected way. Meanwhile, the main character in a low voice starts to mutter to himself that he wishes he could reset the simulation and start over. He had the Korean style op of his dreams within his grasp, but he lost everything when he tripped and fell into the clutches of a delinquent-faced Alfa who gazes like a family beater. Abruptly, Paquito roughly pushes him aside and pushes him to the ground. With a gaze of contempt, she tells him that his suit is now entirely wrinkled. She squats in front of him, her tone scathing, and accuses him of behaving disgracefully. Is this how loose omegas flirt in such a low and dirty way? In the middle of the living room, and in broad daylight, how dare you? You're despicable. You only gaze for excuses to get men's attention. Why don't you use your top head to think instead of just your bottom head? With Diablo Tremendo's Viper Yarara el Paquito, the main character is stunned by the harshness of Park's words, who proceeds mercilessly. Why are you making that face? Do you feel bad? Cher, the main character, ultimately answers yes, he experiences bad, and adds that maybe he should have inquired that before treating him that way. But Park Imperturbable tells him that he doesn't care at all if he experiences bad, and that he doesn't intend to back down since he is truly extremely upset. While Park speaks, Cher observes him and starts to think that after all, transforming this Alpha's pride into love could be an interesting challenge. At that moment, Jin appears concerned and approaches Cher to ask if she's okay. Cher internally curses for being so nice, even though she'd already picked the wrong main character. Without a hint of shame, she tells him that his voice is extremely attractive and sexy. Jin, slightly uncomfortable but maintaining his composure, appreciates the compliment and reflects she seems fine. Meanwhile, Cher's initial date tries to defend herself, saying that she didn't do anything to him, but Park gazes at him with disdain and calmly replies, "Do you think I'm stupid?" The Tinder date, sensing danger, resolves to run away, but Cher isn't about to let him get away. She lunges at him, grabs him from behind, and suplexes him, knocking the man out on the ground. Everyone present is stunned by the scene. Sitting over his unconscious date, Cher curses and reflects that he should have done that from the start instead of relying on others. The system congratulates him on completing the mission, but reminds him that since he didn't get assist from Park, he won't get a reward. Cher reflects that, even though in his past life he was a simple office worker, he additionally practiced Muay Thai. Without hesitation, he steals his date's wallet, grabs out the cash and gives it to Park, saying it's for the laundry. He adds that if he's going to flirt, at least we'll do it in style. Park, far from impressed and not being a pushover, tells him to fuck off. The next day, we see Cher driving a luxury car while complaining about being kicked out of the family residence. Flashing back in time, the scene grabs us to the Kanti family's main residence. Cher's father, Kanti, the family leader, orders her to leave at the residence and forbids her from coming back. Cher tries to protest, but her father slaps him and accuses him of dishonoring the family name with the spectacle he put on at the date. Can't understand how someone so good gazing could be so incapable of honoring the family. Cher responds that she doesn't give a damn, but her father, furious, slaps him again and beats him until one of Cher's older brothers intervenes to stop the assault. Returning to the present, Cher reflects that even though this is a game, getting hit truly hurts. Nevertheless, she consoles herself with the reflected that she doesn't need the main residence, as she has a luxurious condominium of her own. Her life in that residence was always surrounded by pretentious relatives. Abruptly, the system announces a new main mission as its chairman, Saibo aka Paquito, deal with an insistent Omega. Cher can't assist but ponder how someone as intimidating as Park could possibly need help. The reward for completing the mission is to unlock each character's affection level window, but if she fails to complete it, she'll have to wait for the mission to appear again. Cher reflects that it doesn't seem that difficult. She just has to do something fun like pour water on the man-stealer soap opera style. Cher, determined to exact justice, concludes up pouring water on Paquito by mistake instead of the man stealing Omega. But let's go back 15 minutes. In this game, most of the characters live in the same condominium, a location full of luxurious and exclusive common rooms, making it a favorite hangout for the children of millionaires and influential people. Cher had been waiting in the lobby for 2 long hours trying to meet Paquito, but was unsuccessful. Desperate, he resolved to check his status window. The first thing that caught his attention was how silly his profile icon gazed, but what truly irritated him was his low resistance to pheromones. Being the main character, I should be better than the others, he complained. After a while, he reflected that this must be the fault of his recessive genes. In the world of alphas and omegas, pheromones are essential. The lower the resistance, the easier it is to succumb to others. If Cher ran into an omega with dominant genes who released aggressive pheromones, he could end up on the floor in a matter of seconds. To seek for solutions, Cher started googling how to increase his resistance. He found that he could improve it with training and medication, even though the effects of the latter weren't permanent. The leading company in this market is Pheromonazone, run by none other than Jin, Cher's crush. As she proceeds exploring, she discovers there's a hidden power within her state, but she doesn't know how to unlock it. Frustrated, he curses himself for dying before finishing the game. Back in reality, Cher ponders what time Paquito plans to show up. Is he going to sleep on the streets or something? She complains. Abruptly, a conversation between two bottoms catches her attention. They talk about a gorgeous alpha standing in front of the elevator and speculate that he's the president of a company and additionally single. Cher quickly heads over and finds Puck arguing in a corner, which is why she hadn't observed him before. She resolves to hide and wait for the perfect instant to throw water, like when you desire to separate two dogs when they're fighting, and additionally, desire to deliver an impressive line in front of the president. The purple-haired Omega tells Paquito that he shouldn't ignore other people's sincerity and that he can't keep pretending not to see what's going on. Cher reflects. This is the ideal instant and runs over to them while uncupping the water bottle. Nevertheless, instead of spraying the Omega, the water falls directly on Paquito. Cher is paralyzed while a voiceover narrator, he clarifies that upon perceiving the word dog in his subconscious, his hand automatically moved to calm the supposed fight between the dogs. As he adjusts his glasses, Cher says, "Take this motherfucker." Paquito, far from being impressed, gazes at him with a murderous expression and inquires if he's trying to insult him. Cher curses internally, pondering why Park always has to make such a mean face. He tries to explain that he actually desired to insult the purple-haired Omega by pointing directly at him. The Omega, furious, inquires him who the hell he is, while Cher reflects that even the Omega makes that same mean face, even though he desires to apologize. The tense atmosphere doesn't allow it, so he resolves to proceed acting. "I'm Cher Kanthi from the Kanthi group from Thonburi, and my nickname is Cher Pang Pang, since my punches sound like bullets." He proudly introduces himself. Both men are speechless with embarrassment. The Omega slaps him as Cher tries to excuse herself, saying he reflected they were fighting in the hallway and just desired to intervene. Paquito and the Omega grab him by the shirt and with expressions that could kill, tell him he's the only one causing trouble. Cher clumsily starts to apologize, and the Omega, tired, lets him go, saying he's not in the mood for this anymore. Before leaving, he tells Paquito they'll talk another time, but Puck coldly replies, "Don't break my balls." The system informs Cher that the main quest has been successfully completed and allows her to accept the reward. Just as she tries to press the button, Paquito grabs her wrist. Cher gazes up and witnesses Paquito with 30 mood points, which the system displays as a new feature unlocked. Cher observes that Park has no love hearts and considers him overreacting for being so moody. Park, his voice serious and clearly irritated, says, "I hope you are mature enough to take responsibility for this matter." Cher Pang Pang of the Kanthi group, Thonburi district. Cher, unable to contain himself, laughs in his face and mocks him for even mentioning that nickname out loud. Paquito, already at his wit's end, starts racking up more grumpy points. The system warns Cher that if the score reaches 50 or more, the reactions could be severe. 50 or more the reactions. Ignoring the warnings, Cher proceeds to mock Park, telling him that he must be dying of embarrassment for what he just said. Eventually, the system gives Paquito 42 grumpy points and issues a black alert indicating danger. Paquito, resolves to end the nonsense by slamming Cher to the ground with a judo move. As Cher, lying down, complains that Paquito additionally seems to know Muay Thai, the system corrects him, clarifying that it was a judo move. Shortly after, we see Cher being dragged by Park to a private room in the condominium. Elsewhere in the condominium, Bay Kanthi, the younger twin, was gossiping to his older brother, Bom Kanthi, about Cher. Bay mentioned that Cher had gotten into an argument with their father. But this time, something was different. Normally, Cher would keep his head down and remain silent, but this time, he told his dad to give him a hard time. After saying that, he left the residence without shedding a single tear. Bom gazed at him in surprise and inquired if Cher had changed. The two brothers started to get emotional when they understood that their little brother was no longer a child. Through their tears, they lamented that Cher had grown up and would now be leaving them. While crying, they started to insult their father for not valuing his little son and giving him a hard time. Meanwhile, Cher proceeded to bother Paquito, who had taken him to a room in the condominium after the water incident. Cher commented that Paquito was extremely good at throwing people to the ground, but that he still hired bodyguards. She additionally pointed out how ruined her hair was after changing out of her wet clothes. Paquito remained silent for an instant before responding that he was the same naughty Omega from the restaurant. He reached into his jacket. Terrified, he inquired her not to pull out a weapon, but Paquito clarified that he was only gazing for a cigarette. Paquito demanded an explanation for what had happened, and Cher was quick to explain that the water incident had been a coincidence. He commented that he additionally lived in the condominium and had simply witnessed an argument, so he tried to intervene to calm the situation. Paquito told him that he spoke extremely fluently, and when Cher acknowledged the comment, Paquito clarified that it was not a compliment. The president proceeded questioning him, asking if he was just an ordinary citizen seeking to maintain order without expecting anything in return. Cher affirmed that he was and formally apologized, calling him Mr. President. Paquito frowned and inquired if she knew who he was and what position he held. Paquito reached into his jacket again, prompting Cher to tell him that smoking so much was not good for your health. But this time, Paquito pulled out a metal rod and shoved it in Cher's face, asking her who the hell she was. Cher, heart pounding, handed her her ID card, assuring her she meant no harm. Paquito passed the document to his secretary Shin, who came back moments later with a tablet full of information about Cher. Upon reviewing the information, Paquito understood Cher's record was impeccable. He additionally confirmed that Cher's family had no ties to his company and that her family's accommodation reservation had been made long before he reached the condo. Quite annoyed, Paquito figured the matter shouldn't be resolved with just an apology, but rather that he'd have to at least throw him on the floor 1,000 times to get justice. Even though still annoyed, Paquito reflected it unwise to get into trouble with the Kanthi family. Their father was an influential president, and Cher's twin brothers Bom and Bay were renowned as elite leaders with a strong presence in high society. Paquito told Cher that he was lucky to have a powerful family behind him. Cher denied that was the reason for his attitude and stated that he would behave the same, even if he didn't have that backing. Paquito with a cold stare inquired her where her famous gang from the Thamburi district was, and even though the main character's family had been involved in questionable business, they never behaved like uncontrolled thugs like a certain someone. Cher broke out in a cold sweat when he understood that Paquito was seriously analyzing him. Paquito got up from his seat, strolled up to him and grabbed his face, shaking him from side to side while saying that he gazed truly ugly and that his hairstyle was ridiculous. Cher responded that it was his body and his choice. But that one thing Paquito was wrong about was that he wasn't ugly. Paquito raised an eyebrow in disbelief, but he sensed a slight change in Cher's pheromones and resolved to let it go this once. He clarified that he understood the situation, but warned her that if she caused trouble again, he would not hesitate to make her pay the consequences. Cher appreciated the opportunity and quickly left. Back in her room, Cher reflected on how close she had come to dying. While cursing the simulation for putting her in that situation, the system notified her of a 3-minute penalty of tooth pump in to contain herself. Cher proceeded to complain, causing the system to double the pain. The next morning, Cher attended the university, where the professor assigned them a difficult assignment to interview a successful businessman. Even though she initially reflected of her siblings, the professor clarified that they could not interview relatives. At that moment, the system assigned her a primary mission to interview the Alpha president. If she failed, she would receive no grade and would have to perform faculty duties for a week. Without hesitation, Cher prepared her questions and headed to the condominium gym where she found Paquito. Seeing him, Paquito reached into his jacket and Cher reminded him that smoking was prohibited in the gym. Paquito, with a tired look, grabbed out his iron and put it in front of his face. 5. Cher begged Paquito to please assist him, arguing that he was just a poor student who he required to get a good grade. Paquito gazed at him with such a dark expression that it seemed he carried the gaze of 1,000 demons. As he analyzed it, Paquito reflected that this was already the third time he had met Cher, and he was sure it was all on purpose. With a sigh of annoyance, Paquito turned his back on her and inquired why he had to be the one assisting him, questioning since when they had become so close. Cher, with her persuasive tone, responded that his professor would be delighted if he got to interview an Alpha president. She additionally mentioned that his father would be extremely proud and might even forgive him for his recent problems. Paquito, clearly annoyed, responded that he wasn't interested in his personal problems, that he only knew how to talk about himself, and that he should just leave immediately. Cher tried to restrain herself, reflecting that she didn't desire to be insistent, but the reward of the mission was too tempting. With no other option, she resolved to use her secret weapon. With a dramatic gesture, Cher confessed that the reason she followed him was since she liked him and that she was in love with him. Paquito, perceiving this, froze, as if a prankster had taken over his body. Cher went on to explain that confessing that you like someone, even if they don't feel the same way, can have a positive effect, as knowing someone has feelings for you can be comforting. She even added that she would like to be their partner. Paquito seemed on the verge of losing his patience, and the system notified him that Paquito's mood points were rising rapidly. In a fit of rage, Paquito landed a direct punch in Cher's abdomen, knocking the wind out of him. Paquito reminded him that he had warned him not to bother him again, and made it clear that coming from a rich family didn't put him on her level. He called him a spoiled brat, and besides, you're a little omega. There's no need to even mention it. To me, you're a piece of trash, a piece of garbage with legs. Paquito orders his guards to remove him from the place, and immediately afterward they take the garbage out into the street. Cher, lying Yamcha style, reflects that Paquito shouldn't hit her future husband like that. While crying, she tells herself that he's not a bag of garbage that can be thrown away like that. Back in her apartment, Cher reflected on what had happened and figured she had 3 weeks to turn in the assignment. She told herself that if she kept insisting, Paquito would eventually give in, but she didn't desire to be constantly begging. Nevertheless, she recalled that Paquito's secretary, Shin, tended to move around more than he did, so he would be easier to find. Moments later, Cher succeeded to intercept Shin and called him by name. Shin, upon perceiving this, mistook him for a street vendor and told him he didn't desire to buy Palo Santo or socks. Cher denied being a vendor and clarified that she was carrying university documents detailing the interview and its strictly academic purpose. She reflected a professional approach would be the best strategy. Shin listened calmly but abruptly reached out his hand, and Cher reflected she was managing to convince him. Nevertheless, Shin caught him off guard by slamming him into the ground. Shin commented that Cher's size made him extremely easy to throw. Cher, trying to remain calm, told him that if it made him happy it was fine, but she reflected he should be strong. Shin, surprised by Cher's resilience, inquired if it hurt, to which Cher responded that she had an extremely resilient body. So the secretary proceeded. Cher told him that his techniques were impressive, even though she couldn't assist but smile a little more kindly. Shin clarified that Paquito wouldn't accept anything from an omega like him, as he was extremely strict. Cher reflected she had endured so much in the hope of achieving something, but it seemed it had all been for nothing. Shin gave her some crucial information. That evening at 8 o'clock, Paquito would be performing karaoke. Before leaving, Shin warned her that if what she had just stated leaked out, he would cut her fingers off like cucumbers. Frightened, Cher vowed it would be a secret she would take to the grave. As she ran off, Shin pulled out his cell phone and texted boy Cher's older brother. Cher. In the message, Bei inquired him to gaze after his little brother and assist him if he required it, as he'd been having family conflicts lately and was afraid someone was stalking him. Reading it, Shin reflected about how Bei would react if he knew which man his brother was chasing. When the time came, Cher showed up at the karaoke bar and was surprised by how elegant the location was. As he tried to peek through a door, a red-haired boy spotted him and inquired if he was the Omega they'd called to be present. Without giving him time to react, the boy grabbed him and led him inside, announcing to the others that the Omega had reached. Immediately, a group of alphas approached him, surrounding him excitedly. They started asking his name and complimenting him on his scent. Cher, surprised, told them his name was Cher. One of the alphas commented that his name was extremely unique, and they started toasting in his honor, describing him as an adorable Omega. While Cher reflected the alphas were incredibly friendly, and their cocktails even better. She drank even the chicken water. Moments later, Paquito's secretary appeared and was shocked by the sight, as he told Cher that he was pondering why she hadn't seen him with the president. Meanwhile, Cher was sitting surrounded by the 4 affectionate women. Obviously, Cher was intoxicated and complained to the secretary about why he had to ask about Paquito and why he would have to be with someone so cold when he could be surrounded by affectionate, beautiful and kind women. Shin was speechless at this, and just at that moment, Paquito appeared and inquired in a firm voice what was happening. The room fell entirely silent. 6 moments later, Paquito was sitting serious and with his usual imperturbable expression gazing at the 5 boys kneeling in front of him. The atmosphere was heavy, and Cher resolved to break the ice by suggesting that Paquito sing a song to liven up the moment. Paquito glared at him and told him to stop bullshitting, asking why he kept approaching even his subordinates, questioning if it was just another college assignment. The boys, now outraged, called out Cher for deceiving them, but he clearly annoyed and reflected. He'd already clarified everything. They just hadn't listened. Before he could respond, Paquito threw him a microphone and ordered him to sing to entertain them a little. He added that it would be more interesting if they played a game. Cher, a little bewildered, couldn't assist but observed the provocative smile on Paquito's face. Paquito clarified that the simulation was called Sing to Save the Bitches. He went on to say that there was a dog that had bitten her owner's hand and revealed information without permission, in addition to 4 other dogs that, even though they hadn't done anything wrong, he simply didn't like. Looking directly at Cher, Paquito gave her the opportunity to have the 4 dogs assist him sing any song of her choice, but on one condition: they had to get a score higher than 90 points on the karaoke machine. If they achieved the objective, Paquito would pretend that nothing had happened, but if they failed, not only would he punish Cher, but the other's end would be extremely unpleasant. Cher's system notified her of a new secondary mission to save the 4 rainbow children and Secretary Shin to recruit them into his group. The penalty for failing would be that the 5 would go directly to visit St. Peter. Cher hesitated for a moment but reflected that in the future he might need allies to complete more complicated missions. Determined, he accepted the challenge even though he couldn't assist but ponder why Paquito was acting this way. He grabs a tremendous trip with mystical delirium, coming to the conclusion that the president's attitude of prioritizing his own interests without considering the reasons of the other characters is an example of his self-queventinousness. The system notifies him that a new quality of the main character Paquito has been unlocked, so now he can attract your attention. The main character searches for Paquito's qualities and finds out that he's a sicko who likes to watch how people crawl to try to survive. Cher sighed, resigned, and accepted the simulation on the condition that if he won, Paquito would have to grant one of his wishes. Paquito agreed as long as it was within the limits. Cher grabbed the microphone and resolved to sing something memorable. With a confident smile, he started his performance. If you desire to dance, play, paint, sing, you can come to my residence. The idea is to share. You're going to have fun if you desire to come to my residence. I desire to invite all my friends to play at my residence. I desire to jump and dance, and what I have. Share with you, chippy chippy chapa chapa. Dubi dubi dawa dawa, my dubi dubi is magical. Boom 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 boom.
Bo.
Boom, Shin clapped with resignation while reflecting that he would soon be reunited with Saint Peter. The machine processed the score while everyone waited anxiously. Ultimately, the result appeared 96 points. The room was silent for a few seconds, but afterwards they burst into shouts of joy. Shin confessed that he had no faith, but he was glad to be alive, even though Paquito made it clear that he would not forgive him for betraying him so easily. The Rainbow Boys apologized to Cher for treating him badly, and he exchanged a knowing gaze with Shin. The system confirmed that the mission had been completed successfully. Cher euphoric approached Paquito and reminded him that he had a promise to keep. Paquito indifferently told him to speak already. Cher smiled and told him that he would have to dance Lisa's choreography from Blackpink Poo Ni Pepian. Everyone was perplexed. The boys tried to stop Cher, telling him not to do anything crazy, but he calmed them down, assuring them that everything would be fine. To everyone's surprise, Paquito stated he was ready to start the show. Paquito finished his audition for Big Hit, and all the boys congratulated him for having danced so well. Meanwhile, Paquito and Cher shared knowing glances that made Cher comment that they made a good team. Paquito's response was forceful. She slapped him tremendously while calling him insolent. The system immediately notified that Paquito's bad mood had increased to 13 points. Paquito ordered everyone to leave the location since she desired to be alone with little Cher, as she desired to give him a reward for having sung well. The affectionate and Shin women left while wishing Cher good luck, who didn't know what awaited him. Once they were alone, Paquito called him by his full name Cher Kanthi while signaling him with his hand to come closer. Cher froze for a few seconds, processing the order, but soon became annoyed at experiencing like he was being treated like a dog. Determined not to be intimidated, Cher unexpectedly jumped on him, leaving Paquito entirely stiff. With a mocking smile, Cher stated 5, which was like the Korean equivalent of Hyung, while reflecting that Paquito was someone who hated physical contact and that surely this would irritate him to the max. The system confirmed that she was right by announcing that Paquito's moodiness points were now 18. Cher enjoyed seeing his annoyance and resolved that annoying Paquito was a more than satisfactory pastime. Nevertheless, Paquito ordered her to get off immediately. Cher obeyed, though not before calling him a killjoy and reminding him that she'd already confessed that she liked him a lot. In response, Paquito unleashed his more toxic side and reproached her that despite saying she likes him, she's still cozying up to the affectionate ones, letting the pheromones of those alphas soak into her body. Cher sat next to Paquito, maintaining her relaxed attitude, and responded that even though she liked him, they weren't together. So, technically he was still single. While sniffing her fingers, she added that she additionally desired an alpha male all to herself, and that she anxiously awaited the day she'd find one who was exclusively hers. Well, mommy, we understand that you desire your exclusive Pepinot. Cher's carefree attitude caused Paquito, clearly irritated, to ask her if she had gone to that location alone. Cher nodded and clarified that she had come across the affectionate ones purely by chance. Paquito, without letting go of the subject, inquired him if he'd been flirting with 4 unknown alphas. Then he accused him of being a loose omega. Far from being intimidated, Cher seemed surprised that Paquito was so conservative and inquired with a mocking smile if perhaps after hitting him so many times, he'd grown attached to him, and that was why he was jealous. He additionally commented that with his tidy face, it was only to be expected that he would have that effect on people. Paquito, visibly more annoyed, ordered him to shut up and told him that he was acting as if he'd just become an omega, something that even though true Paquito didn't know. Paquito proceeded lecturing him, asking him what he would do if one day he met milky alphas who filled him with pheromones and awakened his sexual desire. He insisted that he should take better care of himself. Cher, amused, inquired him if he was concerned about himself. The system reported a further increase in Paquito's moodiness points, which were already at 21. Paquito, not one to admit anything, stated he had no reason to worry or have feelings for him. Cher, analyzing the situation, reasoned that Paquito didn't like people who understood things quickly and didn't expect him to be so considerate. Nevertheless, she resolved to reassure him, assuring him that he didn't have to worry about him since he had learned martial arts. Paquito, intrigued, inquired him what kind of martial arts he had practiced. Cher responded enthusiastically, striking a pose, and announced that she practiced Muay Thai, inviting him to feel her full strength. Paquito, with a mixture of disbelief and repulsion, couldn't assist but think that it was impossible for someone like Cher to exist. Seeing his expression, Cher inquired him if he was impressed, to which Paquito curtly responded that he should shut up. Paquito proceeded with his hurtful comments, saying that if Cher was bothering him, he couldn't imagine what her parents must have endured. Cher, with a more serious expression, confessed that her mother had passed away and that her father was an absent man. Cher clarifies that Cherkanti's character's mother was an Omega, that is, a man who became pregnant. Cher states that her mother passed away of cancer and as a result her father became much colder. Furthermore, as someone who had recently reincarnated, she didn't feel the family ties and wasn't much affected by the situation. Cher proceeded talking about her life, assuring her that it was much better than Paquito could imagine. Despite fighting with her father, she lived in a luxurious condominium paid for by Cher's sympathetic old man and received a generous monthly salary. These words further irritated Paquito, who responded that despite her comfortable life, he held a higher social position. Then he informed her that he planned to tell his father that he had gone to karaoke and met with several loving women, in addition to getting the president of the company in trouble. What if he reflects, his father would let him proceed, living in the luxurious condominium, after perceiving that. He additionally tells her that this is the reward he desired to give him for having sung so well. Cher, for her part, puts aside her pride and starts to cry while begging her not to tell his father on him, and that he only desired to do his college homework and that was all he desired. Besides, that he doesn't need her to accept him or love him, and that he only desired to do that interview. Paquito ignores Cher's pleas, so he puts the phone to his ear and Cher reflects she's serious about calling her father. So, she starts to cry even harder while telling her to please not to do that her father is extremely old and that he goes to bed at 8 at night and that she shouldn't call him to bother him. In the midst of the chaos, they both tripped and concluded, up on the couch with Cher on top of Paquito. When Cher opened her eyes, she understood she was kissing Paquito's nose. Paquito is speechless at this scene. The situation left Cher sweating with nerves, but for some reason, he couldn't pull away. And abruptly, Cher starts kissing Paquito's entire nose. The system encourages him to proceed. Cher starts doing it with more enthusiasm to the point of covering Paquito's face with drool. Meanwhile, the system, horrified, immediately pushed him away. Cher, trying to regain her composure, apologized repeatedly, but the system notified her that Paquito's mood points had reached 45. Cher tries to apologize again, but Paquito tells her off. Paquito headbutted him so hard that Cher was knocked unconscious. When he came to, he found himself lying on the street, surrounded by garbage, while people passed by and murmured words of pity at him. The next day, the scene shifts to a residence isolated from society, a location where illicit activities are carried out. Inside the house, Secretary Sheen is tied up and being beaten to a pulp by Paquito, who confronts him directly. Paquito inquires him if a beta like him has become attached to a small-time Omega like Cher, and how it was possible for someone like that Omega to get him to betray the trust he had in him. Shin, his face covered in blood, can only apologize and admit that he has no justification for his actions. Paquito, seeing that he has no valid excuses, resolves to finish him off. Goodbye, Shin, you will be recalled among other things for having slammed Cher 4 times against the floor. That same day, but in his usual condominium, Cher finds himself reflecting. He reflects about how lucky he was to survive his last interaction with Paquito, even though his physical and emotional state is so deplorable that anyone could feel sorry for him. He consoles himself by realizing that his father didn't receive any calls from Paquito, which leads him to believe that perhaps he was just trying to scare him or reflecting of a new way to kill him. Cher imagines him licking a knife while he does so. Nevertheless, his mind can't assist but ponder if he could truly die in this simulation, or if an ending awaits him that he didn't see coming in the source material. Having not finished the simulation in his past life, his fate is uncertain. The system intervenes and reminds her to be careful with the paths she chooses, as she could face multiple bad endings. Cher appreciates the advice while cursing it for its lack of help. She resolves to go out and clear her head around the condominium. And while strolling, she sits on a bench with some snacks to eat. Abruptly, two children approach and recognize him. These children witness Paquito punch Cher in the gym. At first, Cher is confused, but the children confirm that it is indeed him. Abruptly, Paquito, who was passing by chance, overhears the children's conversation with Cher, so he automatically puts his hand to his nose as he recalls what happened the day before and ponders what he could be talking about with children. They start to question him about his courage in confronting Paquito and ask him why someone like him would be interested in a guy like Paquito. Cher, somewhat uncomfortable, replies that it was something he was forced to do. The kids ask who forced him, and Cher sarcastically replies that it was a system called love. The kids don't stop there and tell her that after being beaten and dragged around like garbage, the most logical thing to do would be to stay away from someone like Paquito. They even claim that alphas who enjoy beating up omegas are trash, believing themselves to be superior since of their status. Cher can't assist but laugh internally and admits to herself that she agrees with those words. It's afterwards that the system notifies her of a new side quest called Defend Your Male. She must accumulate 10 persuasion points to defend the dignity of her future husband. The punishment for failing would be that Paquito's bad mood would become more difficult to handle, but the reward would be a random card. After reflecting about it for a moment, Cher resolves to accept the quest. The kids proceed to criticize Paquito, saying that his karaoke allows even underage students to drink, which is totally inappropriate. Paquito listens to all this like an old fart and states that Cher is probably messing with those kids. Cher inquires if these things surprise them and goes on to say that for him Paquito is even worse than that. The children are shocked by this statement and Paquito, who is still listening, freezes. Cher goes on to say that Paquito is a show-off, a brazen, shameless, a bully and arrogant. She claims that Paquito reflects he's superior since he has some money, but in reality, he's only been in the business for a short time, so he's still a baby who acts like he's a tycoon. Paquito overhears all of this and gets even more enraged. The system notifies Cher that she has lost 5 persuasion points. Cher proceeds saying that Paquito is an extremist and doesn't respect anyone, and that it may be since of his childhood at school, since he believed himself to be the leader of gangs, and that he still has that personality to this day. The system notifies her that she has 10 less persuasion points. The children, impressed by how much Cher knows about Paquito, ask her how she knows so many details. Cher tells them it's thanks to the power of love, even though it's truly sins of the simulation manual. The children are even more surprised to hear that, despite everything, Cher proceeds to claim that she loves Paquito. Cher clarifies that when you choose someone to be in a relationship, it doesn't matter if they're black or white. What truly matters is whether they're compatible. This statement prompts the system to notify her that she has regained 5 persuasion points. The children start to reflect and admit that they've always been told to gaze for good people, but now they understand that there are more factors at play. Cher tells her with a kind expression that he's impressed by the toxic, abusive main character and that he likes a lot of red flags. The kids say he's extremely cool. The system notifies her that she has reached 7 persuasion points. Ultimately, the children recall that on gym day, it was Cher who made the first move toward Paquito. They additionally acknowledge that even though Paquito is a difficult person, he must have good qualities for her to have agreed to talk to Cher. The children conclude that from their perspective, Paquito could be a good person. Please keep the children away from Cher. This conversation gives Cher the last points required to complete the mission. Paquito is surprised that Cher succeeded to convince those children. The children, excited, recommend that he find someone who treats him well and that one day he will find true love. They additionally show him a video to better resist the physical pain of being hit. They even give him protein powder so he can get stronger and better resist Paquito's blows. Before leaving, they introduce themselves as Joey the orange-haired boy and Pierre the black-haired boy. Meanwhile, Paquito is invoking Satan out of rage. He reflects that even though he is a brother of the Bombay twins, he acts as if he knows everything about him. But in reality, he knows nothing. He calls him a bastard, and that if he desires to play with him, he shouldn't regret it later. But we can see how Paquito is turned on by boys like Cher since he raised half a heart in his love level. In a flashback, we see a young Paquito with a sorrowful expression. His mother suffered from severe postpartum depression, going so far as to take her own life. Since then, Paquito grew up in a poor family with a father who taught him to be strong at any cost. Even those few people who tried to assist the family concluded up getting hurt. While these aren't all the factors, they are enough reasons for someone like Paquito to isolate himself from others and try to make it on his own. Back in the present, Paquito is still enraged by the things Cher stated about him in front of the children, but instead of stepping back, he declares that he is going to play this simulation with him, though he wants her not to blame him for any bad things that might happen. Meanwhile, Cher comes back to her room, reflecting that even though she has missions to complete, all she desires is to take some time to explore this simulation world. She observes that the world hasn't changed much since last time, except for some businesses related to the alphas and omegas that have appeared recently. He additionally reflects on his twin brothers who keep sending him messages or calling him constantly to ask how he's doing. Unlike them, his father never gets in touch, which makes Cher feel the difference in treatment even more. On the other hand, the caring women succeeded to get his number and added him to a WhatsApp group where they send messages non-stop. In an instant of enlightenment, Cher understands that instead of making Paquito dance karaoke, he should have inquired him to let him interview him to complete his college assignment. Abruptly, the system alerts him that he has accumulated prizes that he hasn't opened yet. He resolves to do so and finds 3 random letters. Intrigued, he prepares to open them, but Cher resolves to go out for another walk. On his way, Cher comes across a martial arts school inside the condominium. Surprised by the variety of services the location offers, he reflects, it's a pretty comprehensive place. Abruptly, a teacher from the school calls him and inquires if he is interested in enrolling. He clarifies that they offer judo, taekwondo and jiu-jitsu classes. Cher, curious, inquires to tour the location before deciding, and the teacher gladly accepts. While observing through a door, something catches his attention. It's none other than Paquito, who in the middle of his training reveals one of his nipples. Cher immediately hides, fearing that Paquito might think he's stalking him. From her hiding place, she can't assist but drool at the sight of Paquito's perfectly toned body. She reflects he'd wiped the sweat off his face with his tongue. Actually, Cher didn't think that, but I did. Cher ponders who else could gaze so incredible covered in sweat. She observes as Paquito warms up, stretches his arms and performs his exercises, admiring each of his muscles and concluding that observing him train turns him on more than the sun in the middle of summer. The system interrupts her thoughts and inquires if she just came to spy on men. Cher replies that she was truly just gazing for a hobby, to which the system retorts, is spying on men exercising her idea of a hobby? Cher, trying to justify herself, changes the subject and comments that there are many children learning martial arts at that school. She even reflects that if she had children, she would enroll them there. The system, with its usual sarcastic tone, reminds her that she requires to find a man first before reflecting about children. Cher gives her the little devil, but her attention comes back to the scene when several children excitedly start shouting, "Uncle Paquito!" And Paquito comes back their greetings with a warm smile. The teacher approaches Paquito to thank him for assisting, teach the children in recent days, and inquires if he has considered becoming a coach, since his skills are comparable to those of a professional athlete. Paquito humble replies that he has not, arguing that he is not good enough to teach to him. He adds that he is only a 5th degree black belt, which surprises the teacher since the highest rank among teachers at school is 1st degree. Even though the teacher tries to persuade him, Paquito tells her to wait seated. A little girl approaches Paquito and gives him some cookies as thanks for assisting them train. She tells him they may not be tasty, but at least they're edible. Paquito, with a kind expression, thanks her and tells her that he loves Thai sweets, assuring her that he will enjoy the cookies extremely much. Cher observes the scene in silence and is touched to see Paquito being so kind. He reflects that scene was incredibly sweet and reflects that he too would like to be someone who can bring smiles to others. The system, not missing an opportunity to be annoying, tells him that all he's creating now is drool at seeing Paquito smile. Cher, flustered, denies that's what he is and ponders why he would even desire to see Paquito smile. In an attempt to clarify her own thoughts, Cher inquires the system if it's somehow influencing her feelings since she's now experiencing confused about Paquito. The system tells her it has nothing to do with it. Cher, frustrated, starts to yell that she doesn't like Paquito, even though he's confessed his love for him. Nevertheless, some women passing by overhear his words and start to criticize him, saying that it's disgusting to confess to someone if you don't have real feelings for them. One of them adds that unprincipled flirting is simply disgusting. Even the teacher, who had invited him to school, is disappointed and tells him that his attitude is truly repulsive. Cher, feeling entirely humiliated, resolves to run away. Meanwhile, Shin appears out of nowhere. It turns out he wasn't dead. He'd just been beaten up badly enough to take away his desire to betray Paquito. Upon meeting Paquito, he tells him that he witnessed Cher spying and that she made a face as if the world was ending for her before running away. Paquito remains silent, reflecting that Cher is still harassing him, but deep down, he likes being the center of her attention. He even smiles slightly when he imagines how much fun it will be to proceed playing with him. Shin, who is still by his side, is surprised, since it is not common to see Paquito smile.